Hi, this is Tyson, and today we're going to be using React Navigation to actually make real navigation on our app that we've been working on instead of just the stubbed out fake state-based navigation that we've been using. So the first thing we need to do is we need to install React Navigation. So for that, we're going to do npm install React Navigation-d. That'll save it to our dev dependencies. And now that we have our navigation, we can actually import. We're going to import Stack Navigator from React Navigation. And the Stack Navigator basically will take your current navigation route, and as you add a different route onto it, it'll kind of push it on top of it, kind of like a card-based layout. So we're going to import that from React Navigation. And we're going to make a new function called routes, and we'll just pass in an object into our Stack Navigator, and this will be all of our routes that we're going to define. So the first one will be home. That will be our listing screen, and home is what they use by default unless you define a different route that you're pointing at. So the next one will be the details route, and that screen will be details. And for this one, we actually need a path because it needs to have the ID parameter in it. So for that, we're going to say details/ID, and the ID has a colon before it so that it knows that that's a special parameter. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this stuff inside of view, and we're going to replace it with routes. You can also, at this point, we can actually remove all of this state stuff because we're actually not going to use state on the app anymore. It's completely driven by the router. And since we've removed that, we can actually make this be a purely functional component, which is always good. So we'll take that, and we will basically just return a function with the theme and the routes. And we can totally remove this. And so at this point we have our listing view. This is all of our characters. We don't have a header anymore though. You should note that. So we're going to go back into our listing view, and we're going to take this this part of the component, and we're going to make a variable out of that. We're going to call this listing route, and that's what we're going to return. So now what I can do is I'm going to actually give it a title for this individual route. So what I need to do is make a static object on it called navigation options. And the title, we're going to call this Star Wars app. Save it, and now we have a title in our header. And you can use these navigation options to totally theme your header, but we're not going to go into all that right now. You can look at the ReactNavigation.org for further documentation on how you can theme your headers. So what we're going to do next now is, if you actually click on this, of course, set person is not a function anymore because that was being passed in from our higher order component before. So what we want to do is we want to go into our details view, or actually our listing view, sorry. And you see here where we're doing set person. What we want to actually do now instead is we want to do props.navigate.navigate. And the first argument of this function is the view we want to navigate to, so that's the details view. The second argument is any of those things that are preceded by a colon. So in our case, it's the ID. So we're just going to pass in the person.id as our ID. And we can take out this part. And now it says that ID is not defined, and that's looking at details. And that's because the ID is not always available right away. So we're going to say, if there is a person, then we'll render it, and if there's not, we'll just return null. Alright, so now it's navigating there, but you might notice that there's not actually any data here. So what we need to do is go into our with person higher order component, and before, you see, we just were getting our person ID, and that was coming from our state, but now we don't have that state anymore. So what we need to do is we're going to console.log what's in props, and I'll show you how we can actually get this from our state. So we console.log that. You can see, if I go into one of our people here, you can see we have our array of people. Of course, we have our navigation. The navigation is state, and the state has params. So what we need to do is get that ID param off of the navigation. So we're going to do props.navigation.state.params, and then the ID. So now we can say if the person ID compares to the params person ID, then show it. And there you go. Now we are navigating with React Navigator, and it's completely working, and we've gotten rid of all of the state-based navigation we had in our app before.